Well, hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Tri-C, to the what's the name? Snap No Tap podcast. I'm Tony Cecchine. We have, of course, the legendary Joe Cardinal, and again, a returning guest, Martin Witkowski, who is probably the only person I know that their native country actually threw a celebration party for him. The whole country. The day that he was leaving Poland, they celebrated. They thought it was a wonderful day when Martin left Poland. So yeah, that's maybe he can talk about that later when he's on. But right now he'll be joining us shortly. Yes, how you doing, Giuseppe Cardinale?
I'm doing all right. So school's officially over, so I'm happy about that.
Let's get right into that because I know part of it. So everybody's on, pins and needles wondering, how did you do on your test Monday for the EMT?
Oh, wait, hold that answer. I'm going to suspend it because we've got yet another member joining the podcast.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this is going to be quite the party here.
Well,
so I don't want to.
Oh, yes. I had to put my specs on to see him.
Hey, Brian. Can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Now we're good.
Hey,
I was saying
look at
you
that.
can't see me yet. I wasn't my camera wasn't on, but here we are.
How you doing, Brian?
Pretty well, pretty well. Is that Mark Witkowski?
He's going to be on in a second.
I'm on, and I just wanted to say that not only did they throw a party when I left, but Poland actually got rid of communism, increased their GDP, and became a member of EU. So all kinds of good things happened after I left.
Hey, you just gave me an idea. What do you think of Russia? Because they're looking for people.
That's right. Yeah, maybe I can sink that ship.
Yeah, right.
They're
Well,
doing a pretty good job on their own.
we just launched.
Well, in that case,
huh?
yeah, Martin, don't leave the US if that's what happens, basically. Well, things improve when you leave. Maybe you should, I guess, if we think
Yeah, I
closer,
think so.
right?
Right. Well, I'm going on vacation. Maybe things will improve while I'm gone.
But you're not leaving the country, are you?
I'm taking a short trip, taking my kids to Europe because, frankly,
Oh,
I
really?
think that it's going to be even more expensive to travel. Maybe next year, maybe it will be completely unaffordable. Right now, I just have to mortgage my house.
Well, Martin Brian, actually, we just started the show and we were going to dive into Joe's little adventure with his EMT training is officially over. Catch us up to, what's going on?
Well, I made all the appropriate payments. I paid off all the right people, and I was able to pass the test and the class. So the next big step is going for the national test. So I've got to get that scheduled. And there's a lot of, bureaucratic things I have to, I guess through the EMS system that I was trained in, I have to get approved to take the test and then take the national test. So that's kind of the real final step. So I'm actually still kind of studying, but I don't have to physically go to class anymore. So at a minimum, my schedule's opened up in that regard. But there's still one last hurdle to being technically truly an EMT. So we'll see. That might be, and the tricky thing is I'm not sure. I haven't heard back. We applied Thursday because we as a class all went through online and registered to get the approval for taking the test. But I haven't heard back yet, so I'm not quite sure. So I'm kind of a little anxious because I'd be eager to take it just because, everything's still fresh in my head. But we'll see. So news to come.
Well, we're all proud of you. Most of us that know you didn't think you'd pass, but you did. Okay. And that's great news.
Well, a lot of the books have pictures, which is helpful. for someone like
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. I mean, it's, I'm so, no, seriously, I knew you'd ace it. Good for you. So
Thank you.
basically the whole class passed?
We had, well, so when we have a particularly large class, normally the class size is pretty small, somewhere like around, under 20, usually like around 15 or so, but we had close over 30 initially starting. So, and we lost one or two, but we had the largest graduating class that all these instructors could remember, actually. So, yeah, we kind of stood out in that regard because they usually kind of like let more students in at the beginning because they're assuming there's just natural attrition from it, but it didn't happen this time. So we had a really good class, a lot of good people in it. So, and the instructors were awesome. I mean, that was by far the best part of it. Getting their firsthand experience. That's just, solid gold as far as information. So the thing is, it's funny because it's just really wetting my whistle for it. I wish there was a way, because the next step, is most people go to paramedic school, but that's when it starts to get really intense, where you really almost have to be a full-time student at that point, because you have to work multiple shifts. Like I had to do 2 ER shifts and 2 ambulance shifts. That's really just a drop in the bucket, because like in the case of my shifts, I only saw a few things. There's a lot of downtime if it was a slow day, but I forget how many hours they have to do for paramedics, and they have to rotate through different departments in the hospital. So it's a real commitment. And I think that goes at least 18 months. So it would be a big step. And so obviously for my situation, because I already kind of have a career.
Keep it.
Yeah, exactly. Don't quit your day job.
Yeah, don't even think about it.
But yeah, so it's unfortunate because it's one of those things every step of the way. So, I did the CPR class and I realized, well, that was a good intro, but I want to be better at this. I want to know more. And I keep feeling that each step I do, that's the way it is. It's like, yes, I definitely know more than I ever, did from CPR or other things, but it's like, gosh, I'd like to be better. When I worked with the paramedics, I was just super impressed with their level of knowledge and skill set. And I was like, gosh, I'd really like to have that. But yeah, I think I logistically, I can't figure out how to do that at the moment. So without, like I said, taking a significant pay cut for a while. And so that's
Yeah.
a hard one to do.
You'll never make it up, not at your age. You just won't. So, I mean, trust me, I wouldn't have known this until I started looking, and I've seen like police jobs with maximum age 35, firefighters, maximum age like 38. You wouldn't even probably be able to do it. You could take some advanced or take some college courses deep, like physiology or anatomy or something like almost like pre-med classes, right? That may be an option for you. But right now, look at Justin Brown that was on here. We had another gentleman friend of yours that they're EMTs, paramedics, but EMTs, with everything that my mom's was going through, there was never really a paramedic that came here. They were all EMTs. So, you know what, your knowledge is, I know you have a thirst for more, but it's probably pretty good. Keep it up. We're proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah. And
Joey,
honestly, go ahead.
You had mentioned that your idea wasn't necessarily for a career change. It was just to assist if, when the time comes. Is that right? And I think if so, that's pretty relevant if you look at all the, active shooter issues or just critical emergency things that have occurred even in recent times. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, that was definitely my motivation. I was never looking for a career change per se, this far along in the game, especially, like long term, you can make good money as a firefighter, or, you get into like nursing or something like that. But if you're looking like, if you're playing the back nine, as it were, like in my situation, you have to really have a strong reason or a passion to do it. So it was never a consideration as a career move for me. And it was definitely it was, like I said, it's very much along the line of why I train, catch wrestling and fighting and things like that. It's to be prepared and to make people safe around me. I even, you mentioned kind of some of the extreme examples, like, obviously we got all the shootings that are going on, but I've had even just kind of casual incidents, at least 2 or 3 in the workplace, where people have they've been in like a distressed situation. They've either collapsed or had, really intense labored breathing. And I really didn't have an idea of what to do except, call 911 and just kind of stand there paralyzed. And so to me, it's almost complementary to the self-defense aspect of the thing of it is, it's not always that I have to be violent. Sometimes you have to, help in a positive way too. So it's all kind of, and I've probably said this before on the podcast, but I honestly feel that especially at the EMT level, I mean, they might have to censor a few things because it's some of the stuff they show us is pretty graphic, but a censored version, I think everybody in high school should go through. It should be one of the required science classes. It's like an applied biology class almost. It's not only like how does the body work, but what do you do when something goes wrong, or how do you identify what possible symptoms? It's just part of what I would think should be common knowledge. If I'm starting to have symptoms of a stroke or symptoms of a heart attack, or someone's out at, and it's hot outside, and are they having heat stroke? All these little things that should be, I think if we disseminated that knowledge out there, we'd just all be better for it. So I can't say enough for it. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily easy. I mean, there's a lot of EMT schools in a large urban environment like the Chicagoland area, but even so, there's a waiting list. I was lucky. I kind of had a jump on mine. I was assuming I was going to be starting right now, actually, based on the waiting list, but I got like a last minute, hey, do you want to start? Like it was a Friday, and I got hey, do you want to start Monday? If you can, we got a space. And so I jumped on it in January. Yeah, unfortunately. So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I definitely feel it's just kind of like, so I've done some of the, the outdoor survival camping skills. Again, I just think those are fundamental things that you don't have to be an expert in, but it just should be part of your tool set and part of your experience, and like I said, in all those areas of my life, it seems like the more I get into it, the more I realize I need to get better at it or know more. Like I still is just, and maybe that's just the way my personality is, where I feel like, I could be better at this or whatever. But at a minimum, I would highly recommend people seeking out like CPR training, things like that. It should just be, honestly, people shouldn't be able to graduate high school without that, like a lot of other things. But anyways, yeah, those are just kind of my thoughts on it and one of my motivations for doing it.
Well, you're a good intermediary now. If something happens anywhere, you can spring into action while the paramedics are there and the ambulance is on its way.
And yeah, and sometimes a few minutes can count, or just being informed about like, should we wait here or should we try and get to the hospital? Little thing. I've seen people make the wrong calls on this, and there's been, yeah. So hopefully I'll never be in there, but if need be, yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, CPR and first aid should be known by all. So what else is, well, speaking of first aid, I could use it, man. My hip and my leg have been giving me so much problems that I've got a couple of people that I need to film for, and I can't film. I'm having a very rough go here. And now my back is, aching because, you're compensating. So I got a seminar coming up. We're going to talk about that. Might as well talk about that right now. And that seminar is coming up this month, June 26th. Between the hours of 11 a.m. and 1 at the wrestling room at the Merner, MERNER Field House, North Central College in Naperville, Illinois. This was assembled, or whatever the word is, by Chuck May, who's a guest on here. And well, I don't know. Chuck has all the information. I don't have Chuck's information. I don't do Facebook at all. I'll never be back on Facebook. So I would suggest anybody who's curious, post on this YouTube channel to Joe, and Joe can put you in touch with Chuck, because, I pretty much have washed my hands of the internet as much as I can. So, but yeah, I look forward to getting back. That'll be my first seminar before the COVID, so quite a few years. And just, I just need to get my hip. I could probably deal with it, but now my back is hurting, so I got to get that back going. So those of you who are waiting for videos for me, hang tight. I'll get to them, the Tracy guys. I just don't want to put something out unless I'm moving well. So that's pretty much it. So my mom caught COVID, which was what I was afraid of. She's vaccinated, so hopefully everything will be okay. They put her into isolation on Thursday for 10 days. That's the thing, you know, as long as she was with me, nothing happened. But now that she's in the nursing home, whatever they technically call it, things happen. So up and down, every day I get an automated call. I may get one during this podcast of the count of how many people. So far, they've had over, what did they say yesterday? 220 some odd cases all together. There's not that many people at the place, but you know, the running tabulation. So yeah, it's I can't get in there to see her. So how are you, Brian?
Oh, I'm doing well. You know, kids are just done with school last week, and so that's going to be interesting. I've got some, you know, camps, ages 4 and 8 are my kids, so some small things lined up for them. But a decent amount of making sure they're not vegging out on the TV too much, you know. But my son may be doing some wrestling. We'll see. He did a little last spring. He's only 4, but our local high school program is very, very good. And he was able to jump in the tail end of kind of their spring camp. And, you know, there was like 2 other kids his age. So I guess the question mark is the summer recession, which is essentially just an open mat Monday evenings, trying to connect with a coach and see if there's other ones that are roughly his age or size, you know, that make it beneficial. I mean, I'm talking about a 4-year-old here, so even something like a 6 or 7-year-old is probably like beyond him for you know, a good training partner. But we'll see how that goes. It's exciting just that they're offering this too, and it's, you know, free through the rec program there.
Good luck, man. Yeah, I do agree that especially at that young of an age, you need somebody who's kind of closer in age and or body size for sure. You know, maybe when you get older, it's, you know, teenagers, it's a little different, you know. Again, it depends really on the individual, but.
Sure. And I wasn't even really like gunning to get him in. I mean, 4 is very young, but he just is a very active, you know, kid, and he seemed to really take to it. So I'm like, all right, we'll see what we can continue on with this. For sure.
It's a constant struggle, you know, as a parent to get the kids into doing something active that they're not going to like rebel against and get sick of, because being in front of a computer is so attractive to them these days. It's not like all of us are older and like being at home just sucked. Like I wanted to be outside, because being at home and doing homework and just being bored, and like that's no longer the case. Being at home is the place to be. So getting them out and about and involved in something active is a struggle. I see these conversations all the time with parents talking to coaches, and coaches focusing on making things accessible and fun for the kids. So good luck, Brian. I hope Caleb likes it.
Thanks. Yeah, you're always competing now with the screen. That's really what it breaks down to.
It's a tough battle.
Mm.
And I also wanted to say that, you know, for all his complaining, Tony, if he shows up on a mat and he demos a move, it's 100%. It's like unbelievable how, you know, we're all kind of old and deteriorating as time goes on. But it's just unbelievable to me when Tony's muscle memory is at such a high level that when he executes something, it is absolutely a textbook version of what it should be.
Yeah, Martin, you made it up there, didn't you, a few weeks back?
I did. So we did some filming, and again, like I always tell Tony that like the positions that he's able to still spring into are something that I never could do. And at my advanced age, I would probably hospitalize myself. I would probably need Joe's EMT training to get myself unpretzeled.
No, you know, well, thanks. It's yeah, probably muscle memory and mental memory, because I've always said it's proper visualization technique. So even if I'm not on the mat, I always visualize throughout the day, nearly every single day. I take X amount of time, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, some not straight, but, you know, in blocks, thinking of scenarios and visualizing doing it. Some, you know, it's hard. You can't demo when you're by yourself. Sometimes you need a partner to show the moves. But yeah, and I think the difference between that and music, because music you're using, well, Joe's an EMT now. He should know because it's escaping me now, the fine motor skills.
I was gonna say those are called your fingers, Tony.
Yeah, right. But those you have to actually utilize. Whereas when you're using more gross motor skill stuff or bigger body parts, as long as you're physically not handicapped, I mean, you can retain it. I think for me, my style has changed through the years. You know, I'm not going to be doing things that I did when I was like, when my knees and back weren't so bad and shit. But conversely, I'll do things now that I wouldn't have done back then. So it's a balance. But no, you looked good. We were filming for the membership site, the $10 a month thing. So we filmed a couple of months worth of stuff. And I like that we don't like film a year in advance, because things come up. I think, things in the real world or questions are submitted, and we try to go from there. And we basically just have a topic. And most of the time I don't even bring it up. One of Joe or Brian or who's ever over, and we just go with it. So it was great to see Martin and see him back on the mat again. And yeah, you moved well. Martin did some head scissors stuff, which was one of his best moves. And that's another thing. When we first met Martin, well, nobody said, oh, well, this guy's born to do head scissors. Of course not. And even throughout all of his training, there was no indicator, because his body is not like, he's average size, right? Which is not an insult. I mean, he's just, an average size guy. So it's not like he's got these really long limbs, but somewhere along the way through his training, he just started to develop this thing with the head scissor. Costa was with the double wrist lock. He just gravitated towards it. That was his thing that he focused on. Javier, we figured out, because from day one, he loved to do leg locks. So we just try to tighten him up and get him a little more advanced and move around. And for him, because of his body size, head scissors wouldn't be really the best move, but leg locks, he can get in on them. But others, now Brian is similar to Martin, physically. And Brian, you were one of those guys that just, you were good at a lot of different things. Really, leg locks, arm locks, head scissors, but everybody has their little niche. But Martin's is the head scissors for sure.
Just to circle back to
legs, Martin.
Yeah. Just to circle back to a little bit to what you were saying about like gross motor skills. Like I think that having some level of wrestling or boxing or some like that type of sport, having some level of experience with that stays with you for a very long time. I was talking to some other father who was a competitive tennis player in California. He grew up in LA, which means he got to play year round. And now that he moved to Chicago, he says like it is absolutely detrimental to his tennis game to be not able to actually practice all year round, because there is much finer motor skills involved in tennis. It's not like wrestling. It's not like boxing. You don't get to retain these movements that are big and solid and fundamental in tennis like you do in wrestling. So like, I advise everybody to do some level of those kinds of sports in their life, because it's just like an investment that pays off forever.
Well, that's a good point. And on that, Martin and I train once a week via Zoom, boxing and, boxing and cardio, but the proper boxing, right? And the proper cardio, of course, but not cardio boxing where it's bullshit boxing moves. And of course, Martin has this affinity for fitness, okay? Out of all the guys, Martin was the fittest, always was, he just has that thing. And it came back, he's got that fitness again. But his boxing was something that we never worked on in the past, because the hive mindset wasn't about striking so much. And then when we were at Triton, there was no bags or anything. But Martin, his boxing has come a long way, right? And that again is just those motor skills of doing it properly. It doesn't take, a million years. It just takes a while. Everyone's different. So you can't like definitively say, oh, in 5 lessons, but yeah, that's not, if you just keep like rehashing in your mind, keep your chin down, keep your hands up, keep your elbows in, throw a punch straight, bring it back the same way. Just remember all this stuff. It's memorization. It's like, for those of you who were religious or Catholic schools, you had to say your prayers, right? You said them so much, maybe the words got lost on you as far as their meaning or the impact, but you remember all of them because you said them every day. So if you just run through these things every day, these basics of the physics behind everything, that in itself can give you a huge jump on things. So for me as a coach doing this video coaching live, which is something that obviously we never did years and years ago. I have to focus on it. Once in a while, I'll tell Martin, okay, wait a minute now, you're dropping your hand or something. And then he corrects it immediately. So yeah, I never heard it put the way Martin just put it, but yeah, these gross motor skill sports or activities is important. Even pool's probably more like tennis. I mean, not that extreme, but you've got to get on the table. There's a lot of things going on that you won't retain, especially speed, how hard you hit the ball, how soft, your stroke. So I get it. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for bringing that up.
Tony, that reminds me of, because, if you recall, I was at the tool and die shop for a while and I went away to college, finish up there for a couple of years, but I would still come back and visit. And so I remember one session and the group was already at the Triton College at the time. And, I'd come back and go live with the guys. And then Bruce said something to the effect of like, what you're seeing now are Brian's core moves. And essentially what that meant is if I went into a coma, because I wasn't training at college, I was playing rugby, I was still being active, but it'd be 3 months, maybe even longer where I wouldn't be on the mat, and that's what the idea being, that like, if I was in a coma or come out of it, these are the ones that I would be doing first. Like they're just there, you've kind of got the ones that are just ingrained and others that are like kind of maybe ancillary, if that's the right term, or what, secondary, but those primary ones are the core ones. So I thought that was an interesting concept. It just reminds me of that as we're talking here.
Wow, that's very insightful. And now that while you were saying that, I was thinking of classic examples of that are boxers, not wrestlers, but boxers who get put on Queer Street, right? You can see they're in essence almost out on their feet, but they're still fighting and they'll go instinct. And I think that's kind of what he was getting at, instinctually, these are the moves now for you, Brian, whatever the moves were that, are ingrained. I think the same probably for all of us. I know that when I'm not, if I'm not actively wrestling somebody, and then I would get on the mat and just like go for it, I'm going to go for my moves, the ones that I like the most. That's another good point to bring up for people who are out there training. Everyone identifies with their own set of strengths and weaknesses, and don't try to become necessarily a carbon copy. It's good to follow somebody, to have that, to aspire to be like such and such, but you may develop different strengths along the way that other person, for whatever reason, didn't develop. And that's what makes everyone, look at Tyson and Floyd Patterson. Now, a lot of you guys probably never saw Floyd Patterson fight, but they had the same trainer, Customato. Patterson, of course, there's a physical difference, size and power and all that, but they both fought differently. Same trainer, same style, technically, the peekaboo, but they're both completely different. That's just how, people develop differently.
On that note, there's the videos now. Last month or so, they were released on YouTube. Him and Henry Cejudo from the UFC. So they were filmed recently, and based on Tyson's age, you could tell where he's basically coaching the peekaboo and showing clips. And I don't know how much Tyson's training now, but he still moves around. He still looks good. I mean, it's down to his bones if you think about it. The muscle memory and the things he can do, even at that what's now basically an advanced age for him.
Well, even more extreme example, we've talked about this before, this clip that I sent to Tony of Rocky Lockridge laying out some bum in front of 7-Eleven. I mean, this guy was out of boxing forever, and he was, addicted to drugs for a period of time. But he throws an excellent right hand, and I don't think he knows how to throw a crappy one anymore.
Yeah, no, he jabbed and crossed. Yeah, it was as if he never stopped by. It was like he just came out of the gym. And of course, he'd have broken down in an actual sparring match or something because his fitness probably wasn't there. And boxing is a instantaneous kind of sport. You drop your hand for a split second because of fatigue or for whatever, you get clobbered. That could be the end of it. But you don't really, many times you don't have a chance to regain yourself. That was a really great clip to see because he did what he had to do. And granted, it wasn't against the toughest guy in the world, but it doesn't matter. He ended it quickly. And he was ready to pounce too if the guy got up. He was set to go some more, and he didn't have to.
His skills were still there. So that's to give another plug to your video coaching stuff. Like, I'm hoping we've been doing this for 6 months now. I'm hoping that eventually I'll get to the point where I'll never be throwing a bad jab or a bad hook. Like, we'll just work it out of my system to the point where, I'm not going to be a boxer, but I am going to have a competent jab, and I'll never lose that ability, which is different than like golf or tennis, where if you don't practice, you'll shank it or you'll slice it. You'll do those things that just require a finer level of motor skills.
Well, I can make you a guarantee. If you keep up with it, you'll either look like Rocky Lockridge or you'll look like the other guy. Okay, so it's one or the other. So make sure you look like Rocky Lockridge. By keep just the fundamentals, the basics. Just all you saw there from Rocky Lockridge was, if I remember now, it was a jab, and then he dropped into his, he did a drop stance, and he came across with the right hand. That was it. Okay, and that was all it took. He didn't have to move or shuck or anything like that. I'm sure he could still do all of that. He passed away now, but at that point in time, he would have been able to still do all that. So yeah, that's why I tell everybody, man, and I've said it for years, these people who want fancy moves or show me something new, I'm here to help you. I'm not like, I'm not an entertainer as far as a song and dance man. You got to master the fundamentals, master the science behind it, and quit. And this goes for everybody, not anybody in particular. Quit trying to do the flamboyant, wild stuff, because you may get lucky. I mean, honestly, it's like a lottery ticket. You may get the winning ticket, but more times than not, it's a loser. And you're putting yourself out there. You're putting yourself at great risk. You're expanding a lot of energy. So, keep it simple and keep it very effective, and work on your brain. Find different ways to take the simplest move and find different ways to make it work, as opposed to trying to find a completely different move. If you worked on that, your setups or your feints or whatever, and become creative, you'll start developing things that nobody in the world has ever done. Okay, same move, but done in a way that's never been done before, and you'll be remembered more for that than a flash in the pan move that looks great on YouTube, but falls apart against anybody with any athleticism and the will to kill. So that's always been my thing. And my coach, I mentioned this before many times, I'm sure. The first move he ever taught me, as opposed to show me, was the top wrist lock. Well, I became enamored with that move to the point of that's all I did for the longest period of time. I got so good at it that, I mean, because I was putting everything else behind, you know, so I just cared about that move. And I saw it in my sleep, you know, and I became so reliant on it. He said, stop. Okay, go on, move on. Okay, quit or do it in a different way. Quit just doing it the same way all the time. Be a little bit more creative, because I forgot the word he said or the expression, but I was basically like a one-trick pony, but not just one move. Just I always attempted to try to pretty much do it in the same couple of ways. So broaden your horizons, I think is what he said, or something like that. It was half English, half Polish, I'm sure, but really later, I mean, I became like a leg lock guy. That was my thing. I wanted to do leg locks. This is like I'm talking about wrestling submission wise. I really like the leg locks. And I have a twist. I mean, of course, chokes were relatively simple, but my thing was, because of the shit that I was raised in, I wanted the people that were messing with me to feel everything that was happening, both physically and emotionally. So putting them to sleep was kind of like doing them a favor, and I didn't want to do them any favors. I wanted them to be conscious when their limbs were getting snapped. That's psychotic, perhaps, maybe, but that's how I felt. And that was why I'm like, chokes are simple, especially back then. People didn't protect their necks. No, I want this person to have some lasting damage here.
Yeah, Tony, you touched on something that I think is pretty important. And there are a lot of flashy moves on YouTube, and there's a lot of great information, obviously, too. But one thing that I've seen, and these are by people that are, you know, purported catch wrestlers, is you'll see these combination moves, and they're sometimes done within the context of the scramble, which I totally get, because there's going to be some, you do this person does this, you do this. But in some cases, they're doing like 3-4 moves offensively to get to the finish. Whereas we, you know, coming and visiting you and, you know, in recent years, you're doing like 1.5 and getting to the finish. Even if the guy moves a little bit, it didn't matter. You would, you know, it's a slight tweak as opposed to a full on like positional shift change. It's kind of hard to explain. I know I talked a little bit about this when we were, you know, training, but yeah, I mean, like I said, it looks very cool. And I don't want to say that's the totality of what that instructor is showing, but a lot of what people are doing is almost like inefficient or a lack of economy of motion when it comes down to it. Because I mean, you want to go quickly and you want to go fast.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, because I don't watch these videos, but it reminds me of the Indiana Jones, when the guy's doing all of his fancy moves, whatever, and he just pulls the gun out or whatever it was and shot him. I don't remember now, but yeah, you don't want to take the long way around, because it wastes gas, you know, meaning your body fuel, and the longer you take to get to the finish, the more exposure you're giving yourself, okay, which is bad. So when you go up against somebody who's high level, you're not going to be able to pull those moves off. Those massive 3-4 thing, it's not going to work. You may catch somebody now and then by surprise, but when you enter, now this is, again, I don't know these people, so I'm not attacking them, but when you're in that world and everybody in your gym, let's say, is trying to do that same kind of style, well, all right, everybody's the same, so somebody's cream's going to rise to the top. But when you start traveling to different places or going up against other people, that's when you tend to get exposed. I saw one clip I don't know how long of this, like probably this year, of some tournament, and one kid was calling himself a catch wrestler. He was getting like barbecued in the YouTube clips because he wasn't doing that bad, but then he tried something like Brian's, you know, alluding to, tried some fancy move. And of course, the people weren't just bashing because he got submitted. He wasn't just bashing the guy. Of course, they're bashing catch wrestling. Well, that shit that kid was doing was not catch wrestling. His coach may be calling it that. It's not. Wrestlers, real wrestlers, catch wrestlers would never have done that. It's weird. Okay. I again, like Brian, I can't quite explain it, but it's gotten a bad reputation because of these people who are trying to pull off this, you know, to be the Jackie Chan of wrestling or something. That's not the way to do it. Okay. You've got to be foundation. Your foundation has to be strong and use core moves, deep science, and be careful when you try these fancy things. It's to show off in the gym is one thing, you know, or to experiment just because you have a thought. But when you try to do it in competition or you try to do it in a life or death scenario, you're really putting yourself at risk. That's just my take. That's not my style of coaching. And that's probably why at my age, I'm still able to produce. I couldn't pull off some of these crazy moves at this age, you know, even if I wanted to, because it's more acrobatics than it is, you know, fighting.
How do you differentiate what we're talking about from what you would describe as chain wrestling, though?
Well, chain is a logical here. This is how I approach it. I don't chain. You chain. Okay. So Brian said these guys are doing 3 to 4 moves to get to the finish. I'm going to make you do the moves to get to the finish. Okay. So my movement is going to be so subtle or so indiscriminate, you know, just imperceptible. You're going to make the counter move and spring the trap yourself. Okay. You're going to bring the move to me. So there's the huge difference. I understand how the body moves. So a lot of guys, I don't want to mention names, good guys, but they'll chain on a limb, for example, top wrist lock to straight arm bar to double wrist lock. Okay, that's cool. But that's not normally how the body is going, the opponent's going to react. They're going to be using, unless they're a fish, they're going to be putting their whole body into it. So it can become very like a crapshoot. Whereas if you're ripping logically while you're doing this, you know how you're going to get that guy to move. Okay. You know what his reaction is going to be. So therefore, I'm never really at all putting myself at risk. You're making those 3 or 4 moves like Brian was talking about, so I can spring the trap. And you guys, even when I'm wrestling you guys, you probably don't know it unless you really watched the video, or if we filmed it. If you watched it in review, you're like, oh shit, Tony did this, or when Tony moved 3 inches that way, I must have thought he was getting up, or I must have thought he was switching positions, and that's how he caught me. Yeah, it's me doing subtle things and never. So that's how I chain. And again, I chain the whole body. So I might be fighting your arm, but in my head, I want to go for your neck or your face, or, you know, a knee or an ankle. But instead of me going from the top of your body all the way down to your toes, I'm going to make your toes come to me. So there's the difference. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And I can think of examples, and I think the idea of switching targets too is I mean, it's interesting because Brian's observation of there's kind of this tension, especially the way you describe fighting, is you don't want it to be a protracted fight. You've got to think that the clock is running, right? Because we're thinking in terms of self-defense. So I don't want a several minute grappling match to set up a finish. You know, especially if I'm in a street situation, if I'm down there, I've got to think, I've got 1 or 2 things, and I've got to finish this guy quickly, you know, because I think one of the things you've preached against is so often we get in this competitive mindset where I've got the clock running and I can stall for time or whatever. And that's counter to what is safest for you in a self-defense situation, where you might have, you know, like you might think, I need to finish this in 30 seconds, whatever he gives me. I'm starting to lose my train of thought here, not having a senior moment. But the idea of, like, a lot of times if I've got someone in a certain pin, I can threaten a choke, and I know they'll be so panicked about defending it. They know enough to know I'm going for a choke. They can sense it coming, but and to defend it, they're actually going to open up their arm. So I can sense they're going to try and get their arm out of this head and arm triangle or whatever, and it's going to fly right into what I need to do a top wrist lock on it. And so that, I mean, is that kind of an example of chain wrestling? And I guess also combinations that are, because there's certain, they're not necessarily fancy moves, but you're trying to use like simple kind of high percentage moves to set up other ones.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I guess. But to stick with Brian's 3 to 4 move thing, I can think of 3 or 4 moves ahead, easy. But it depends, meaning I want you, like, okay, like this head and arm thing you're saying. Okay, you go for the arm bar, then you go for the choke or side choke, or he rolls over, and then you got a rear choke, that kind of thing. If that's what you're alluding to, I'm on the same page. But the point is, you're the guy that's doing most of the movement, okay? I'm not, okay? I'm not putting myself at risk. So that to me is how I always look at it. And when you get more advanced, you can start influencing what limbs I want, or what limbs you want to attack. So the other thing is the uncomfortability of the opponent. If he's constantly uncomfortable, he's got to make adjustments. So the more adjustments you make him, the more adjustments he has to make. He's going to gas out quicker. He's going to panic, and he's going to create the opening. Right there is a chain. Okay. It's not a technical chain, but it's a chain of events that you must have happen. And all of this factors into what I do. So that's why through the years, everybody's like, man, Tony taps people out so quickly. He's got all these different submissions. It's not even the different submissions. It's, yeah, I tap people out quickly because I'm not wrestling like the rest of the world. I'm attacking you completely differently. And it creates a psychological situation in you, all right, where you're not really going to have time to sit there and get into your game. It's over. You got to play my game until either I blow out or something happens to my detriment. So it's, again, my style may not be for everybody. Some people may like that more, superfluous, a way of doing it. But the real deal of it all was never like that. Okay. I don't think you can imagine some of these great wrestlers doing these moves. It just wouldn't, I don't even know how to, I honestly can't put it into words because it's a strange concept to me. Some of the moves obviously came from professional performance wrestling, which, that's good. It's good for that because it's entertainment. But some of these moves are just, I give them an A for thinking outside of the box, but it has to be reeled in a little bit because you're blowing yourself out. You're making risks that you shouldn't make. And, and it reflects bad, not on you even necessarily, but on the style, which 25, 30 years ago, when I kicked all this catch wrestling stuff off on the internet, that was the only guy really teaching it, so they didn't see these kind of moves because I wouldn't want anybody to do those kind of moves. They don't work. They're a small percentage. So it's just a different thing.
I also remember when we had people training for their UFC fights that came through, and they would immediately try to get like a solution for a particular hold. And the solution always involved getting out of the hold when it was on. And I remember there are tips and things that you can do to try to fight out of it. But that's already like a battle you've lost. And you would always rewind it to like, well, you shouldn't be in this position to begin with. It's not that you need to come up with this miracle cure. You shouldn't be this sick.
Yeah,
And then
it's
we
like,
had these long discussions about, how do you avoid getting into this rather than how do you get out of this, which there may not be that many options.
right. It's like blocking a punch once it's already landed. Right. It's, and that's the big thing. Okay. If you think you have the solution, I have this move that can get me out of, such and such an arm lock. You've lost the battle. Yeah, you want to get into that dominant, it's such a backwards chain. And what it means is you have to be the dominant force, okay? There's so many steps along the way before a person puts that submission hold on you, that if you don't see these moves that he or she's doing before the hold is on, then you have a lot of studying to do, okay? You're not ready for the big time. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah, there's no miracle cure. Sure, I know things. Oh, here, like, I don't know, I think it was Brian Deneve, somebody on the podcast was saying, Tony, we could put Tony in a straight arm bar and we could never tap him out. He could counter that. He could, the straight arm bar was ineffective. Well, why was that? Well, it wasn't, it was because of all the preparatory stuff that I did to get my tendons and things prepared for that. It wasn't a little difference. Yes, there was a thing that I did as well, but if I just showed you the thing that I did, it wasn't going to work. Okay, because your body still had to be conditioned to do that. So this adds up to what Martin is alluding to. Don't just look for a trick to get out of the submission. Find out, why did I get into submission to begin with? How can I prevent the guy from putting it on me? That's what I want. That's what I want to hear. And that I can show you, but it's going to take work. It's not going to happen in 5 minutes normally. So there's no shortcuts, guys. How do I block Mike Tyson's punch? Well, first of all, you got to be in shape. Secondly, don't be in front of him. Third, have the angle so if it does land, it's not going to be as effective. Fourth, don't drop your other hand if you're blocking the one punch, because he'll counter. So there's so much to it. Showing how to block, the technical block, is easy, but it's not going to work because you don't have the other skills. Long-winded answer, but that's the answer.
Yeah, I remember in particular the cases that I witnessed were to do with like a double wrist lock, right? And this was to prepare against for a fight against a fighter that had a streak of victories with a double wrist lock. And the fundamental kind of defense against that was just don't let him have it. Like what happens that he gets into it and gets it so deep that it becomes a successful hold? And it's basic wrestling counters that we ended up reverting to, outside of these tricks that you can utilize to help you minimize or try to escape out of it. But better defense is never get into it to begin with.
Yeah, and it worked for him. He never got submitted with a wrist.
That's correct.
Wrist.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. It
Everything
absolutely worked.
Right. But here's the thing. Let's say there's a miracle trick, right? Here's how to get out of it. Well, now your opponent, if again, we're going to give your opponent credit that your opponent is sharp, or his cornermen are sharp. Well, if he gets you in that move again, you've already you've shot your wide. Okay. You've shown how the trick is done, so to speak. So now the opponent knows, okay, if I put him in, let's say that double wrist lock, here's what he's going to do to counter it. So I'm going to make sure that he doesn't do that counter. Whereas if you block it or change it, don't even let the guy get that double wrist lock on to begin with, he's going to be like, shit, man, I can't get my best move on this guy. I got to come up with something else. Okay. And that's what it's all about. You want to make yourself as impenetrable as possible. Reverting back to boxing for just a brief moment, it's like when you can't land a solid punch on your opponent, it gets frustrating. Therefore, as the clock's running out, you're going to get desperate. Okay. And you're going to start throwing wild haymakers. They may land, but odds are you're going to open yourself up to get knocked out by a counter punch. Same thing here with the grappling. You're going to get so flustered because literally nothing's working. So when you are able to counter his moves immediately, you can immediately put him on the defensive and launch your attack. So it's just a different way of looking at it. It's very proactive, I think. But there is something I do want to add. When Joe was talking about, this and that about time, one of the things that I used to do, and I still do this almost every day, especially when I'm in the kitchen, doing a couple things at the same time. You should all wrestle or box or spar and set a time limit. Say out loud before the round starts or whatever it is. Say to whomever, the timekeeper, say 30 seconds, for example, and the timekeeper keeps his mouth shut. All right. Now you're doing your thing, but in whatever it is you're doing with your training partner, keep that 30-second clock in your head. Get that timing down. And then immediately, no matter what position you find yourself in, say stop when you think you're at 30 seconds. And the timekeeper will tell you it was 20 or it was 45. Okay. I do that when I'm doing multiple things in the kitchen. I'll try to keep an internal clock going. A lot of it may come a little bit easier for me because of my music, but this is another excellent way that everyone can train themselves. So like you can do it sitting on your couch. Let's say let's say your buddy calls you on the phone. If you can get another clock with a second clock on it, just talk normally, but in the back of your mind, you got your internal time clock going, and think to yourself, all right, at 45 seconds, I'm gonna look at my phone or look at the other clock, the stopwatch, and see how close you get. Because it helps you in a way, you're not really necessarily thinking of two things at once per se, but you're getting that internal clock going, which in a street fight, especially, well, probably in competition, but in street fights, it's very important that you don't hang around too long. And if shit's not going your way, get out of Dodge.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but there is an infinitely interesting event when George Foreman boxed, I think, was it 3 guys back to back, or maybe it was 4. So it was either 3 guys, 4 rounds each, or 4 guys, 3 rounds each. And it was just like, there's so much to unpack there, but I thought it was really fascinating how some of those guys obviously had a smaller window of time to work in than George Foreman. George Foreman was in it for basically like 12 rounds of a workout. But these guys, given the clock that they had in their head, some of them were like, balls out, I'm gonna go get the champ. This is my chance. And then some of them were like, I'm going to ride out the clock and say that I've been there with the champ. It was a very different approach to the same amount of time from different people based on their objective.
I remember that it was 4 or 5
Before
guys.
you answer that, I gotta step out, so I just want to say goodbye. It was
Hey,
fun.
good to see you.
Yeah,
All
thanks
right,
for
okay, next
joining.
time.
Thank you very much.
care.
Thank you,
Bye.
Brian. One of the boxers that he fought was a guy named Terry Daniels. I do not remember the other guys anymore because you know me with the names. But yeah, that would have been an interesting thing to talk to George about. But in it, see, now that's a whole different phenomenon because you're going to go up against fresh guys, right? Granted, they're not individually, they're not at your level, but you're going to go up against freshness. So after the 4 rounds or whatever it was, if it went 4 rounds, George has got to, he's going up against the new guy. Yeah, it's really interesting, but there is that internal clock that all of us are born with, all of us have, and you can develop it. It's fascinating. It's something that you can mess around with. Like I said, in your living room, figure out a way to, let's say you're watching TV and you really it's like when you get so involved, so focused that you forget about the clock. Think about that as a street fight. You're so focused that you're no longer, you got tunnel vision. You're no longer aware of your surroundings. And the next thing you know, you're in a whole world of shit. Somebody's going to knock you out or stab you or shoot you or something. Timing is so important. There's two kinds of, there's timing in the fight, but then there's time, the concept of time. And you cannot mess around with that. You've got to get these things over with quickly. And, you know, the quickest way is, like we were talking earlier about, when I'm chaining, let's say, I don't want to have to be doing all the movements. That's a long way for me to travel. Whereas if I do a little bit of movement, you're doing movement, all of a sudden now we're multiplying the factors here. So it'll happen quicker. So if you start thinking along those ways, how can I make him move? You're going to be a much better fighter. That's what I call control. I'm making you do things that you probably, that you don't even know you're doing. Okay. This happens a lot in, a lot of psychological, like people do, I don't, just they make you do things. Next thing you know, you're in deep. Okay. And we have all done this in relationships. You do something to a buddy, to a guy, you keep doing things, all of a sudden he becomes your friend, or he becomes your enemy. Or if it's a woman thing, she loves you now because you did things to create that loving environment. Well, this is how you have to be in a fight. You got to create these situations. You've got to control the person. You got to become a control freak, and learn how to control that person as opposed to just yourself alone. But the only way you can control somebody, first and foremost, is to learn to control yourself. We mentioned this a lot in my videos. But then once you control your body, now unleash it, start controlling your opponent, his mind and his body. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect to all those things. Joe, anything you wanted to add on this kind of a thing? Like, I always thought it was kind of fascinating how people manage their energy and focus over the course of this period of time, because there is a lot of things out of your control that happen in a sports environment. Like the guy might be, you see that in boxing all the time. Like, there is rounds that are super active and rounds that aren't. And I always thought it was kind of an interesting phenomenon, right? Like, why isn't it always all go and then we can just be done after 5 rounds? But that's not necessarily where some people are at their best. Maybe they're slow starters, or better at the finish line.
And Tony, I don't know if he agrees with me, but this is the difference between kind of self-defense or real fighting, if you will, and sportive fighting. Because, yeah, I don't think if those same two boxers got into a fight on the street, it's going to go X amount of rounds. They would probably have the same idea that time is of the essence. And so it's weird because you kind of train for the sport, like whether it's a grappling match that's going to, last several minutes, but you would never want, and it's good for conditioning too. And so, like, it is tough because I think if you spend a lot of your time, it's an interesting question and something to think about when you're training, because, like, let's say I'm in a position where I know there's a couple of pins, the way Tony shows how to pin, either lateral press or head and arm, that when I put people in them, I know I'm tiring them out. I can just feel it. If I fought my way to that pin, I'm going to catch my breath and let them struggle hard. This is their time to burn energy. I don't know but again, that's because I have the luxury of time in a training scenario or a competitive scenario. I might do that, but maybe at a micro level. So maybe, strategically, okay, I'm going to let maybe just a few seconds to let them really, kind of flail and try and get out, and then go for whatever, finishes or sit-ups I have from there. So it is kind of different. Yeah. Cause I definitely, especially because I think I'm kind of the opposite of you where, well, for a couple reasons, as far as conditioning, I've even when I've built up my conditioning outside of like grappling, I think I have a habit of doing things like holding my breath. So I make it worse for myself, so I gas myself out even when I'm in a good position sometimes. And so I have to be very deliberate about watching my breathing and things. So I'm always kind of trying to conserve my energy in like, if I've got a position where I know they're going to struggle and I've got several minutes to go or whatever, even a few minutes, I'll be like, okay, let him work, and that's probably, I've got to definitely separate that in my mind from when I'm like, if I'm in a really like dangerous situation, there's no more, time for that game. It's got to be kind of almost like a wind sprint, maybe with slight moments of catching my breath if I haven't been able to take this person out yet. So I don't know, it's kind of a wandering answer, but as far as kind of the pace of a fight, there's definitely, I think, two very different areas when it's sport and self-defense. I don't know, Tony, do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, first, when you were talking about pins, really, you're using generic because they're hold downs because you're planning on holding them there.
Right, yeah, not pinning.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. I call it pins, but it's not. Just like chokes really are strangles and whatever, depending on how you're doing it.
Sorry to interrupt, Tony, but I'm gonna drop off as well. I'll listen on, but I'm gonna have to end my
Well, thank you for
participation
joining, man. It
phase.
was great having
Yeah.
you on. It was
Okay,
awesome.
Martin. See you
Okay.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, when I do my thing, people are like, man, he's a blur. Well, I do this thing where I'm roughly 20 seconds full blast, 15 seconds where I'm resting a little bit, moving, 20 more, 15 less, on, off. But it gives you the impression that I'm constantly going full blast when I'm not, okay? I go on, off. And I vary it. This is, of course, this is when I was fit. But you have to have an assessment. See, here's the thing, especially in a street fight, well, even in a combat sport, you have to have good awareness, okay? Sometimes guys get into the thing where I want to use my move on him. I want to use my hip throw if that's what you're known for, or I want to get that double leg. And sometimes you get so wrapped up in that you're missing all these other opportunities. And it happens to the best of them, right? You get that tunnel vision, and now you're in let's say in a time limit match. Now you're fighting the clock too. So for me, I just always wanted to put my will out there. I wanted to impose my will on the guy. And I knew growing up that I knew more moves than anybody. I mean, now grappling is more popular, and not just because of me, but, in general, BJJ and other guys. But, still, even though people know the moves now, or most of the moves, they don't know the approaches or the applications yet either, okay? So that you could still be at an advantage. People are opening themselves up anytime you watch any match, including mine. Anytime you see me, you're always vulnerable to something. Just got to make sure that vulnerability that you give isn't deadly to you. So my advice to guys like yourself or others who are struggling with their conditioning, or this match is taking too long, is you look at the broader picture. Okay, what did you miss? Because I guarantee you did. I'll guarantee you did. Without mentioning names, we saw two big shots, or I did, and I mentioned it to you privately. Grappling for whatever it was, 15 minutes, and the blown opportunities were staggering. And they didn't, for whatever reason, have that field of vision. They were narrow focused. I don't know what they were focused on. Didn't talk to them about it. But to miss one opportunity is okay, but when you're missing dozens, there's a strategy problem here. There's a overall knowledge issue. Okay, you've got to start approaching fighting differently. The body's big. There's a lot of vulnerable spots, and if you're not capitalizing on it, you're doing something wrong. And many times people will tend to give their opponents more credit than it's due. Okay. I learned this what I just mentioned, shooting pool. When years ago, so I lost to some guy, this or that, and after it was all over and done with, and I told him, "You're a really good shot." He's like, "No, you're a better player than me." I'm like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Yeah, you made some blunders. Okay, you made some tactical errors. You shot for the wrong balls. All right, you should have went this way, as opposed to the way you went." And I'm like, "Shit, that's right," because I wouldn't have fought if I had to fight this guy, I wouldn't have fought him physically the way I shot pool. I did not the fancy moves, but I took the long way around, like Brian was alluding to earlier, the 3-4 moves. I took the long way. This is regarding shooting pool. So most of the time it boils down to us. If we lose, it's because of us. I mean, unless you're just a beginner or half-ass and you're just, going up against the champ. Well, it's still you. Yeah, the champ was better at all of those things, but he was only better at all those things because of you, because you weren't as good as him. So it always boils back down to us. It's all on us. And some people rise to the occasion. Yep, I'm going to get better. I'm going to do better. I. Others are like, And there are things that I'll never be the best at or really even any good at. So I don't care in that regard if I don't perform well, or I just won't even try to do it. But in a street fight, you don't have that luxury. It may be cast upon you. And then you got to rise to the occasion, man. It's hard for me to put it into words, Joe, because all of us have different life experiences and different coaches or just different things. And, now the last couple decades has been, with the MMA stuff and the chance of winning a title, the fame, the glory, the money, or whatever, all of that motivating factor. Well, none of that was around in my day. So maybe if that was in my day, I would have wanted to be a bit more flamboyant and more of an entertainer and have like a more exciting style. I'm just speculating. I don't know. But I'd like to have thought how like Mike Tyson was in the beginning. He was just blasting through these guys in a couple rounds, because he was so efficient and effective. And I'm not kind of trying to compare myself to Tyson in that regard, but I'm just trying to say that my philosophy was like that and always had been. It actually predated Mike Tyson because I'm older and I started this before anybody ever heard of Tyson. And it was get this shit over with as fast as you can, and you'll still come out looking good. All right. So whatever.
Yeah, I think in a competition, even if something isn't flamboyant, if it's quick, people, especially in a combat thing, a quick knockout, especially if or a quick tap out, people respect the skill in that, even if it doesn't look fancy. I would imagine if you have a string of very quick victories, that's hard not to be impressed by that, even if it doesn't look pretty per se. If it's just efficient and machine-like, that's still, I think, at least people in the know. But in general, you say first round knockout, that gets some respect from people, even if it wasn't from a spinning back kick or something.
Yeah, but again, everybody's got their own personal flair, their own personal style. I was more of a workhorse kind of guy. I just wanted to get it over with. I had the ability, or I had speed. Okay. That was the biggest physical trait I had, was speed. Whereas Rodvan had that incredible strength which I knew was unattainable for me, to hit that level of strength. For me, it was, I had speed. Let's work on the speed thing. That's what I did, you know, and then along the way I developed strength, but I tried to make sure that it didn't, like, I didn't become like fairly strong. And now because of me being fairly strong, I'm fairly fast. I couldn't have that. I always wanted to be, you know, really fast and then maybe lose some speed, but I really don't think I did. I probably, of course, I mean, it may have been imperceptible, but because of my heavier weight, as I got bigger and stronger, but I also learned how to move better. Okay. Because when you're fast and you're flying around, sometimes you get so caught up in moving so quickly that you don't take the most economical way. So then I had to start working on that. So overall, it worked for me. But I've seen guys much bigger, stronger, you know, they'll never have the speed. So you work with their tools, you work with their strength and their size, and you make them use their weight against someone to slow them down. Like somebody my size that's quick, you would try to teach him to utilize the weight. So it gets me tired, wears you down. But you know, when it comes to a street fight, you don't know any of that going in, unless you happen to have a grudge with somebody and you run into them. So you just have to kind of impose your will, and that's where being good at your techniques, having a big field of vision where you can look at the guy's weaknesses and assess them quickly. I think that's very important. I think that at times is really overlooked, in my opinion. And so that's why I don't follow along like Brian and maybe Martin watches all these videos. I don't, because I come from a different world. It's a language that I don't understand. And I'm just not into it. I'm never going to change the way I teach. I'm never going to change the way I fight. And I'm never going to, while I can certainly appreciate their athleticism and their drive and their this and that, I'm never going to be a fan of that style. I can appreciate everything that went into it, but I'm not going to like it. I know that going in, because I've already, you know, we've had those types come through the gym and it doesn't work out for them. They get snuffed, and you know, it's easy to counter that stuff.
Well, before we sign off, and I was kind of hoping we have the other guys here, but wish you kind of a day early happy birthday, Tony, just to the audience.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, tomorrow. So I'll be out of the loop tomorrow. My buddy Scott wants me to get over to his house first thing in the morning. I got a feeling we're going to go to the city, but I don't know. I have no idea. I could be completely wrong. Yeah, thanks. It's just another day older, but I'll be 58 tomorrow. And it's hard for me to believe that I started this at 13 years of age. It'll be 45 years to catch wrestling. And it'll be 50 years from when I had my very first boxing lesson. I was 8 years old, I believe it was. Could have been younger, but I say 8 with my grandfather, but then 10 with Coach Snyder. So however you want to look at it, long ago. It's just hard for me to believe. But I mean, I thank you for the birthday wish. This is going to be one of the saddest birthdays ever, because of my mom, because of just everything in general. And we're coming up 4th of July, 5 years that Kevin got killed in the plane crash.
God, I can't believe it's been 5 years.
5 years, yep, since the gym is
Unreal.
gone and Kevin with the plane crash. So this is going to be, I mean, the number 58 does not bother me. I don't care about any of that shit. It's just that there's really not a lot to celebrate. You know, there just isn't. So hopefully tomorrow I can put a positive spin on it. And then I want to get my hip and, you know, feeling a little better so I can film for these people. So please bear with me, folks. Sometimes things happen. But yeah. So anyway, thanks. And I hope people in the listening audience, if you want to come down to Naperville, maybe Joe can put up a link or something and just do it. It would be great to have you at the seminar. It would help me out and it will help you out. And what I want to do is if we get a core, whatever, how you ever want to word it, then I can start putting together a street fighting oriented curriculum where, we're going to start at step one, movement, stance, this and that, strategies and science behind everything and vulnerable spots and, all of that shit. Do a lot of stuff on the feet, not just on the ground. Especially when it comes to street fighting, it's more anti-grappling than anything. And then your grappling is going to be explosive. But yeah, that would be great. That's coming up June 26th. And, but yeah, thanks for everything, Joe. And I'm glad that you got your thing going with the EMT and yep, everybody, we will see you next week. The good Lord willing and the creeks don't rise. And Joe, anything you have to say closing?
No, I think this is a really interesting discussion we had. I'm really glad we had it. And yeah, like I said, early happy birthday to you, Coach.
All right, thanks. See you guys.